Anyway, yes, I am very happy to be here representing my project. I, like the other speakers, represent a very talented group of people, and we're very appreciative of the MIDAS for giving us money to play together. Most of us on my project have been working in the learning analytics space, or actually all of us. So there's 3 of us from the School of Information: Chris Brooks, Kevin Collins-Thompson, and myself. From LS&A is Tim McKay, Ann Gear, and Gus Everard. And Perry Sampson is from engineering, and you heard a bit about Perry's work. So Perry, Kevin, and Tim overlap between the 2 projects. And as I describe them, hopefully it will be clear why there's shared across them. But the point is that all of us have been doing stuff on campus in the space of learning analytics. We all know each other, we end up on some of the same committees and so forth, but we haven't really had the opportunity to figure out a good way to integrate these projects. And so as you saw from the title, we mean this both literally and figuratively. It is a holistic modeling of education, which we're calling home, because we're knitting together lots of things that we can know about students from these various projects and the various data that we're focused on. So before I go on, although I'm the last speaker, I wanted to put up for you what the working definition of learning analytics is and what it means to me. It comes from SOLAR, who is the International Academic Society for Learning Analytics. And they put up this definition that's been now pretty widely cited, but it has a couple important components that I want to stress and highlight. And the first is that it's data about learners, right? So there is business analytics, there is academic analytics, which is a lot of data that the academy knows about itself and how it runs. But we're interested in data from learners. We're thinking about them in terms of context, whether the context is higher education, public, private, large, small, physics, computer science, or whatever. We recognize that context is important. And what we want to do is understand learning and optimize it, figure out how we can optimize it, and how we can also optimize the environments in which learning occurs. Everybody benefits from learning analytics. There are reasons for all the various stakeholders on campus to be involved in supporting learning analytics work, and I feel extremely lucky to be on a campus where we do have buy-in at all these levels. I'll show you a little bit about our work, but I can tell you the question that I get asked over and over and over again when I go and give talks off campus is people look at me and say, how can you do this? Who lets you do this? And I can say that Michigan does for lots of different reasons, one of which is the Student Data Warehouse, which was referred to earlier. Now all our campus from the various, all the data on our campus from the various systems live together in one place. We are also incredibly lucky to have a Office of General Counsel who is not risk averse. So we're doing things with our data that people think is illegal, and it is not. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then again, a buy-in from the top of the administration. Our provost's office, both Martha and her predecessor, were very supportive of the whole idea of learning analytics and have made some funding and support for doing this work available as long as 6 or 8 years ago. So our particular project, we have a vision, and I think it matches the vision with the definition that I gave you for learning analytics. We're really hoping to lead improvements in teaching and learning. We're focused here on higher education because this is the data that we have available to us. And what we're looking for is to uncover some of the correlations or relationships between student behavior and success so that we can help maximize that. We all are deeply committed to the idea that every student who gets admitted to the University of Michigan should be able to be successful here. But they all don't come equally prepared to be successful here, but we teach them and treat them in our system as if they all actually are. There are a few programs on campus, of course, that support students who are identified as potentially being at risk, and we've partnered with a number of those programs. But the bottom line is if they're here, we should figure out how to help them graduate, and I think how to help them do that in a reasonable amount of time. So we're looking at primarily at 3 different facets of teaching and learning. We want to understand the learner behaviors, as I said earlier, and what that means in terms of how they're doing here. We are going to be creating a semantic knowledge base from natural language text and structured data. So there's where the role of people like Kevin Collins-Thompson and Ann Geer are playing on our project, and supporting new evidence-based representations of learning. So some of us on the project, like myself, have been studying learning for a very long time. I like to look at theories of learning that I think we have reasonable support for, and think about how we have this incredible new wealth of data to investigate those theories and to understand when and how and for whom they apply, and what are the determinants of that. We are well suited to be considered a data science project because we look at essentially all the data we have on this campus about all the students. So we don't have an issue of sample or selection or recruitment. We have existing, what did I tell you guys? Millions of rows of event data from tens of thousands of courses and hundreds of thousands of students, spanning over a decade of data from educational technology use here. So if you've used course tools, now you're using Canvas. Some of you have been around long enough to remember course tools, C tools, Canvas. Every click in those systems reside on our campus. Now Canvas is a little bit different. We're moving into Canvas, but because we are one of the original Sakai schools, I've never had to deal with a vendor until more recently to ask them what are students doing in our learning management system. It lives here with all the other data that we know about students. We don't have to ask them to opt in. They don't opt out. This is in the course of doing business. We collect all this data on students. They fill out applications to come here. So we know lots of things about them, how competitive their high school is, whether they took any AP courses, what their family income is. So there's lots of things we know about our students without having to ask them. And we have legitimate and ethical reasons to know this, with, of course, the protection for their student privacy and the utmost care and respect for how we need to be good stewards of that data. We're looking for various structures for how to deal with all this data and how to make it useful for the kind of projects that we want to do. And we're getting the data in, as I said, we Canvas data. We've got data from other vendor systems like Perry's Echos 360, Google Forms. So increasingly, we're looking for a way how to not only leverage the data that we have on campus, but data that's coming in from other sources of educational technology that are used by our students. I love the 4 layers that the speaker talked about this morning. In terms of both architecture, in terms of service. Those are 2 places that are pain points for us. In educational technology, we have to be able to have the technology capture the data that we need. And so I have gotten in arguments with C-Tools developers about whether a click should be recorded or not, a particular kind of click. And similarly, terms of service are going to be hugely important for us. One of the things that is my soapbox whenever I go to other academic institutions using educational technology is make sure your contract with the vendor gives you access to the data, and access to the data at the level that you need it, not aggregated, not anonymized, not 6 months after the course is over. And these are all very touchy issues. So we've conceptualized the home project under sort of 3 general headings and 3 sort of general projects, and they are all related, but it was a way for us to move the work forward by conceptualizing it in this manner. And the first project, you can read here, the relationships between student behaviors and outcomes, and we have some very specific research questions that we're going to be using the data that we have available to look at these. I'm not going to give you examples of every project for every research question, but I wanted to make sure to give you a general overview of the kind of things that we're looking at and give you some examples of projects that are ongoing that are going to be knitted together and further developed as our project continues. So one example of a project for home is eCoach. Who's heard Tim McKay talk about eCoach before? A number of you, but not all of you. So this is a system that he developed modeled from the School of Public Health, a coaching or tailoring system for behaviors that he's applying then to educational behaviors. So he's giving students advice about how to be better students that's generated in real time depending on actions that they're taking in the course management system and in the eCoach system with a number of tools and so forth added in, and giving them messages that directly assess them if they're intending to be majors or not, if they're men or women, if they've taken a prior course or not. There's a lot of data that we know about the student that we're seeing that a message tailored specifically to that student and their needs, how it maybe can be more effective in uchiing them closer to the kinds of behaviors that are going to lead them to success. We like to talk about all these projects, but in particular, Tim talks about how we're putting this data to work. So there's a spectrum of ways that we can do this, and this is something we're very interested in this project. We can give students, advisors, and faculty data directly. This is giving some data directly to the students. There's a system that I helped develop, Student Explorer, that gives data to advisors. We're talking with instructors about what kind of data they want on their students. So that's one end. And the other end is the experts end. So this is more like the dashboard that only advisors could see, to have them interpret it and give the results back to students. But we're looking really for a middle ground in thinking about who should get this data, when and what should it say, and how can we best shape the decisions that students are making about how they're being better students, and figuring out, as I said, who needs to get what when. This is this expert tailored communication system, and it does use this rich real-time data. And as I've used the word tailoring before, it's very personalized. So, so what you see as a student, you know it's coming from a system, of course, but you know it's giving you information that relates to who you are as a student. And so this is, Tim says, imagine a campus in which a personalized expert coaching is provided to every student, connecting them with timely feedback, encouragement, and advice. And this doesn't happen by them coming to the counseling center or the academic advisor's office or the instructor's office every single day after every single class, where the person addressing them may not actually know that much about who they are as a student and what their goals are. This is a little screenshot that gives you some idea about what it looks like, although of course it's very difficult to read. But it gives the students some concrete things. This is a get things done list that statistics professor, the amazing Brenda Gunderson, developed for her class. And it really carefully walks students through what do they need to get done, allows them to check it off, and then the system then gives us feedback about, has the student checked this off, and when did they check it off, and what do we know about the students who do well in the course, how many of these did they check out, when did they do them relative to when the exam or the homework is due, and so forth. And then it gives the students some feedback. It's telling the student how they're doing so far, and in terms of their labs, their lab attendance, the homework. It's breaking it down for the student to give them some direct feedback about how they're doing on these various dimensions for which their performance is being assessed. And it's also giving them feedback about how they're doing relative to the rest of the class. So it's giving them some comparative feedback and saying, here's where your grade is, and here's the grade distribution for the class. So you can make some decision about exam results if you have done what you thought you would do in the class. This is an area I'm very interested in doing further investigation of. I'm very interested in whether a one-size-fits-all dashboard is really the right way to go. So we're going to be gathering data from students about not only who likes it, but who finds it motivating. Do some students find it demotivating? Maybe not everybody should get this information, and we need to figure out when and how. And Tim is doing an experiment right now that comes from some theory. There's a theory called the values and affirmation intervention that involves asking a student to write a short essay or answer about something that's personally important to them, of values. Like, do they value their friends? Do they value their family? And you get them to do this kind of value affirmation, and it's been shown to buffer students from stereotype threat. So if you ask students to write about the things they value before they take an exam, especially for women, underrepresented minorities, they tend to do better on that exam than if you haven't. So Tim's running a study right now where he's giving some students an opportunity to write a short answer about something more neutral, or to identify their values and write a paragraph or two about why these values are important. And then control students get a different kind of prompt, and we'll look at whether we can find the consistent results with the theory for doing this. So this is a little A/B testing that he's doing with the students I think it's in Brenda Gunderson's class. So it is a randomized controlled trial, 950 students, and so that's a case where we're very specifically looking at a subset of students. This is another project sort of grouping for us with the semantic knowledge base from natural language text. I'm very excited about this. I don't do this at all. It's where we get some more overlap with Radha's project. And students write a lot of things for the university, and I was speaking at lunch with one of the panelists from earlier today. As an instructor, he said this is very difficult to assess. So we know that students write discussion posts. We know that they do some of the short answers. Nobody likes to grade those, right? And you can't grade those in a class with 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 students. But we know that they're very meaningful assessments of learning. So we have to figure out how we can use data science, data methodology to be able to get a better handle on these kinds of demonstrations of student learning, so we can better understand their role in student success and how we can use them better and more widely. I would personally be happier than I could say if we never gave a standardized multiple choice exam ever again on this campus. Maybe this is a way we can get there. Project 3 is, again, some more representations and figuring out how to study writing, and ask questions about the written work that students are doing. There's an ongoing project that Ann Geer is doing that's been funded under MWrite that's, as I said, scaling and sustaining writing to learn in classes. So they're gathering the large corpus of data that we have about student writing on campus and figuring out what to do with it so that we can incorporate writing into large enrollment courses. They've found that we can increase student engagement, that students who have to write for class seem to have a bigger investment in it than taking yet another multiple choice exam, and that we can find that there is deeper conceptual learning, that students have a better ability to express what they've learned, connect it to other concepts and so forth. And so this will give us a way to really push on those questions and to see what extent we can validate how and when and for whom these kinds of writing assignments can really be valuable in teaching and learning. So she's talking about here moving us away from just having students write so they can show us that they understand, to having them write because the process of writing really transforms how they think about the knowledge that they're gaining as they're writing. So one of the ways they're doing this is with the automated peer review. So we're looking at ways that we can have, so one way to scale this is to have students in the class review other students' assignments. We know from the MOOC literature that students hate this, but it is increasingly something that is more and more relevant in today's information economy. Get comfortable helping other people think about what they're saying and what they're writing. And so it helps students develop skills to do that. And then trying to automate that in a way that can allow more students to be involved in it and for us to feel more confident about the value of those assessments when they're administered by peers. This is the next steps that that particular project is working on, and as I alluded to earlier, developing algorithms for these kind of automated text analysis. And I'm almost running out of time, so I wanted to talk about where we're going with this. And it fits a lot of the dimensions that you've heard already today about these MIDAS projects. We want an integrated student data ecosystem, much like the transportation project. We want to build something here at Michigan, data of student learning that can be of high value, not just for work here on campus, but a leading example for other higher ed and probably down in K-12 to build these kinds of information systems about their student. And it provides us with a unique test bed for theory, for practice, for technology innovation at a scale that really most people don't have access to. We're not Facebook, we're not Google, but as I said, we've had tens of thousands of students here for years and years and years. So the scale of data that we have the potential to look at is huge, and what we need to do is to work on our methods and techniques for really making good use of that data, while at the same time, of course, protecting student privacy and demonstrating value and scalability so we can show why these things are important and what we can learn from doing them. This is my favorite quote. I like to end with this quote because I think it does echo some of the things we've heard in the last couple days too. But I really feel that this is really important about when we're thinking about what we're doing. Right now, especially in higher ed, in education, we value what we measure. ACT tests, graduation rates, time to degree, those are measures that were developed for accounting, as one of our speakers said earlier today. But instead, let's turn that around and think about measuring what we value. What do we value in learning and learning processes? And what do we value about how we want students to think and communicate and interact with the world when they leave the university? So what are the measures that we can identify that help us shape the student's path to being the kind of person that, the leader and the best that we want here at Michigan? Thank you.
Needs or wishes in terms of outcomes. And we get that all the time. In computer science, for instance, we'll have students asking, what classes should I take if I want to go and work at Google? So they have their own wishes. They might care less about a certain grade.